Montana Territory, 1875. The sky stretched endless blue over the town of Silver Creek, where hope and despair mingled as freely as the dust and dreams of those seeking fortune in the West. For some, the frontier was a place to rebuild. For others, a place to hide. For 25-year-old Andrew Ellis, it was both. Andrew adjusted his Stetson as he dismounted his Palomino, Thunder, in front of the general store. 3 years working cattle had hardened his once soft hands and bronzed his face. But beneath his trail-worn exterior remained the troubled heart of a man who'd seen too much death for someone so young. The war between the states had taken his father and brother, and the lawless years that followed had taught him one undeniable truth. Attachment was merely an invitation to grief. Ellis, called Jacob Perkins, the livery owner, thought Callaway Ranch would have you breaking horses till sundown. Andrew nodded politely. Mr. Callaway sent me for supplies. Winter's coming. That it is, Jacob replied. Might want to stop by the boarding house later. Widow Stevens hired some help. Pretty young thing from back east. Educated too. Andrew barely acknowledged the comment. The frontier was no place for romance. People died out here, from disease, from violence, from the land itself. Love was a luxury he couldn't afford, not when survival demanded everything he had. Yet as he entered the store, Andrew couldn't help but notice the woman reaching for a bolt of fabric on a high shelf. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a loose bun, wisps escaping to frame a face that belonged in a painting. She wore a modest blue dress that had clearly seen better days, but carried herself with unmistakable dignity. Their eyes met for only a second before Andrew looked away, busying himself with his supply list. That second was enough to notice eyes the color of summer sage. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying a hint of Eastern refinement. "Could you possibly help me reach that bolt of calico?" Andrew hesitated, then nodded, retrieving the fabric with ease. "Ma'am," he said, handing it to her. "Thank you," she replied. "I'm Rebecca Summers. I'm new to Silver Creek." "Andrew Ellis," he responded simply. "Welcome to Montana Territory. It's certainly different from Boston," she said with a small smile. "But I find I'm growing accustomed to the open spaces." Andrew nodded, then tipped his hat. "If you'll excuse me, Miss Summers." He collected his supplies and left quickly, ignoring the curious look from the shopkeeper. Attachment was dangerous. Kindness even more so. The frontier had a way of taking what you valued most, and Andrew Ellis had nothing left to lose. 2 days later, a violent autumn storm swept through Silver Creek, turning the main street into a river of mud. Andrew had just finished securing the horses at Callaway Ranch when Mr. Callaway approached him, concern etched on his weathered face. "Ellis," Doc Harrison stuck out at the Miller place. "Mrs. Miller's baby's coming early. Widow Stevens sent word they've got a sick boarder needs attending. Could you fetch some medicine from the doc's office and take it to town?" Andrew nodded, knowing there was no refusing such a request. The code of the West was clear. You helped your neighbors, especially in times of need. The rain had subsided to a drizzle by the time he reached the boarding house. Mrs. Stevens, a stout woman with practical hands and a no-nonsense demeanor, met him at the door. "Thank the Lord you've come," she said, ushering him inside. "It's Miss Summers. Fever took hold this morning, and now she's burning up something fierce." Andrew felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "The doctor sent this," he said, handing over the medicine. Mrs. Stevens looked at it doubtfully. "I don't know the proper dose. Can you stay while I prepare some broth? Just to make sure she takes it correctly?" Before he could refuse, she was bustling toward the kitchen, leaving Andrew alone in the hallway. With reluctance, he followed the sound of labored breathing to a small room at the end of the corridor. Rebecca Summers lay in the narrow bed, her chestnut hair spread across the pillow like spilled honey. Her face was flushed with fever, her breathing shallow. At 20 years old, she looked both younger and older somehow, vulnerable yet determined even in illness. As he approached, her eyes fluttered open. "Mr. Ellis?" she whispered. "Dr. Harrison sent medicine," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "Mrs. Stevens will be back shortly." Rebecca attempted to sit up, but fell back weakly. "I'm sorry to be trouble. I'm not usually this helpless." Against his better judgment, Andrew helped her to a sitting position. "Everyone needs help sometimes, Miss Summers. Even out here. Especially out here," she corrected, with unexpected clarity despite her fever. "That's why I came. To help where I'm needed. The simple statement caught him off guard. You chose to come to the territory? She nodded. After my parents died of influenza, there was nothing holding me in Boston. I taught at a small school there, but out here, education is scarce and precious. Mrs. Stevens returned with the medicine and broth, and Andrew helped Rebecca take the proper dose before making his excuses and departing. But as he rode back to the ranch, her words echoed in his mind. She had chosen this hard land, not fled to it. Over the following weeks, Andrew found himself in town more frequently than usual. He told himself it was coincidence each time he encountered Rebecca Summers, now recovered and teaching the town's children in the back room of the church. He told himself it meant nothing that he noticed how she always carried a book, or how her laugh sounded when the blacksmith's youngest son told jokes, or how she never seemed to mind the dust that covered everything in Silver Creek. One crisp November afternoon, Andrew was loading supplies when he heard a commotion down the street. A group of trail hands from the Carter outfit, known troublemakers, were circling Rebecca as she tried to pass. "Come on, schoolmarm," one called. "Surely a pretty thing like you gets lonely out here in the wilderness." Andrew was moving before he realized it, stepping between Rebecca and the men. "The lady's trying to pass," he said quietly, his hand resting near his holster. The largest cowboy sneered. "Well, if it ain't Calloway's pet. This ain't your business, Ellis." "I'm making it my business," Andrew replied, his voice deadly calm. A tense moment passed before the men backed down, muttering curses as they retreated toward the saloon. Rebecca exhaled shakily. "Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Though I was handling the situation." "Were you now?" he asked, unable to hide a small smile. "Well, perhaps not entirely," she admitted. Would you mind walking me back to the boarding house?" They walked in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "You're quite different from the other ranch hands." "How so?" "You're quieter, more watchful." She glanced at him. "And sadder, I think." Andrew stiffened. "The war leaves its mark." "You fought." 18th Massachusetts Infantry, he replied. "Lost my father and brother at Antietam." Rebecca nodded, not offering empty platitudes, which he appreciated. "I lost my fiancée at Gettysburg." The revelation surprised him. "I'm sorry." "Life continues," she said simply, "even when we think it shouldn't." At the boarding house steps, she turned to him. "Mrs. Stevens is hosting a small Thanksgiving gathering next week. Would you consider coming?" Every instinct told Andrew to refuse. Attachment meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant pain. But looking into her hopeful eyes, he heard himself say, "I'll try." The Thanksgiving gathering turned into a Christmas party, which led to Andrew escorting Rebecca to church services when weather permitted. By early spring, the citizens of Silver Creek had begun to regard them as a pair, though Andrew still maintained careful distance, never allowing himself to acknowledge what was growing between them. One April afternoon, they rode to a nearby meadow filled with wildflowers. Rebecca had asked to sketch the landscape for her students, and Andrew had reluctantly offered to accompany her for safety. As she sketched, Andrew found himself watching her more than the scenery. The way she bit her lip in concentration, how the breeze played with strands of her hair. "You're staring, Mr. Ellis," she said without looking up. "Andrew," he corrected. "After 6 months, you might call me Andrew." She smiled. "Andrew then. And you may call me Rebecca." "Rebecca," he said, testing the name. "What brought you to Silver Creek, truly?" A young woman of education could find better prospects elsewhere. She set down her sketchbook. "After James, my fiancé, died, Boston felt suffocating. Everyone pitied me, the poor girl who'd lost her intended. Then my parents passed, and there was nothing left but memories." She looked out across the meadow. "I wanted purpose." The advertisement for a teacher in Montana Territory came at precisely the right moment. "And have you found it?" "Purpose. Yes," she said simply. "But I've found more than that. I've found possibility." The way she looked at him made Andrew's heart race. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a different life, one with a home, children, Rebecca's laughter filling rooms instead of emptiness. Then reality intruded, cold and harsh. 3 months earlier, he'd received word that Nathan Walker, a deserter he'd once testified against, had been released from military prison and was rumored to be heading west, vowing revenge. The letter remained hidden in Andrew's saddlebag, a constant reminder of dangers past and present. "You deserve more than possibility," he said quietly. "You deserve certainty." Rebecca's smile faded. Nothing is certain out here. That's what makes it worth living. Thunder rumbled in the distance, cutting their outing short. As they rode back to town, Andrew's resolve hardened. Rebecca Summers deserved better than a man haunted by war and hunted by enemies. By early summer, the whole town could see what Andrew refused to acknowledge. Mrs. Stevens took him aside after church one Sunday. "That girl is sweet on you, Ellis," she said bluntly. "Question is, what are you planning to do about it?" "Mrs. Stevens, don't Mrs. Stevens me. I've watched you circle each other for months. Life's too short for such foolishness, especially out here." Andrew removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "She deserves better than what I can offer." The older woman snorted. "That's for her to decide, isn't it?" But Andrew knew better. The letter about Walker had been followed by reports of attacks on former soldiers in neighboring territories. It was only a matter of time before his past caught up with him, and he wouldn't risk Rebecca being caught in the crossfire. He began making himself scarce, taking the longest cattle drives, volunteering for overnight watches. He avoided town when possible and kept conversations brief when they did meet. He told himself it was for her protection, even as he saw the hurt and confusion in her eyes. On the 4th of July, Silver Creek held its annual celebration. Despite his intentions to stay away, Mr. Calloway insisted Andrew attend as his representative. The town square was decorated with bunting, tables laden with food stretched beneath shade trees, and a makeshift dance floor had been constructed near the newly built gazebo. Andrew spotted Rebecca immediately. She wore a yellow dress he hadn't seen before, her hair partially pinned up with yellow ribbons. She was helping organize games for the children, her laughter carrying across the square. He kept his distance until evening, when the dancing began. He was preparing to leave when Rebecca approached him. "You've been avoiding me," she said directly. "I've been busy with ranch work." "That's not true, and we both know it." Her green eyes held a mixture of hurt and determination. "If I've misunderstood what's between us, Andrew, just tell me plainly." The music swelled around them, couples twirling across the wooden platform. Andrew looked at her, really looked, and felt his carefully constructed walls threatening to crumble. "You haven't misunderstood," he said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." "Why not?" "Because the frontier is no place for promises I can't keep," he said, the words tasting bitter. "Because my past has a way of finding me. Because you deserve someone who can offer you certainty, not danger." Rebecca stepped closer. "I never asked for certainty. I asked for you to see me, to see us." "Rebecca, dance with me," she interrupted. "Just one dance. Then, if you still want to walk away, I won't stop you." Against his better judgment, Andrew led her to the dance floor. Her hand felt small in his as they moved to the waltz, her yellow dress swirling around them like sunlight. For a few precious minutes, he allowed himself to forget everything but the woman in his arms. When the music ended, she looked up at him with such hope that the words tumbled out before he could stop them. "I care for you more than I should," he admitted. "That's why I've stayed away." "That makes no sense, Andrew." "It does if caring for someone means putting them in danger." He took a deep breath. "There's a man, Nathan Walker. I testified against him during the war when he deserted his post, leading to the deaths of 2 men. He's been released from military prison and has sworn to find me." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "So you've been protecting me?" "Trying to." Rebecca took his face in her hands. "And who's been protecting you?" The simple question undid him. Years of solitude, of holding everyone at arm's length, of believing he deserved to be alone, all challenged by this woman who saw through his defenses. "Meet me tomorrow," she said, "by the creek at sunset. If you don't come, I'll understand it truly is goodbye." She pressed a quick kiss to his cheek and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Andrew standing alone beneath the stars, more afraid of hope than he'd ever been of danger. The next evening, Andrew rode to the creek, still uncertain what he would say. Rebecca was already there, sitting on a blanket beside the water. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said as he approached. "Neither was I," he admitted, sitting beside her. They watched the water in silence for a moment before Rebecca spoke. "I received a letter today. The school committee in Helena has offered me a position for the fall term. Better pay, more students." Andrew felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath him. "Helena? That's over 100 miles from here." "Yes." "Will you take it?" Rebecca turned to face him fully. "That depends on you." On me. I came west seeking purpose, Andrew. I found it in teaching, yes, but I also found it in you. Her voice trembled slightly. I found it in the possibility of us. Andrew swallowed hard. Rebecca, I love you, she interrupted. I've loved you since that day in the meadow when you looked at me as if I might be something precious. But I won't spend my life waiting for a man who's too afraid to love me back. It's not fear, he protested. Isn't it? She challenged. You've used the danger from your past as an excuse to keep everyone at a distance. But the real risk isn't Walker or any other ghost from your past. It's opening your heart again after losing so much. Her words struck him with the force of truth. She saw through him completely. I can't promise you safety, he said finally. Not out here. I'm not asking for safety. I'm asking for honesty. Rebecca took his hand. Tell me the truth, Andrew. Not what you think will protect me, but what you truly feel. In that moment, looking into her eyes, Andrew realized the wall he'd built around his heart was no protection at all. It was a prison. And Rebecca Summers held the key. I love you, he said, the words both terrifying and freeing. I've loved you since you stood in that general store reaching for calico, looking so determined and beautiful it hurt to breathe. Relief and joy washed across her face. Then why push me away? Because everyone I've ever loved has been taken from me, he admitted. My father, my brother, friends from the war. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me. Rebecca squeezed his hand. Life offers no guarantees, Andrew. Not in Boston, not in Silver Creek, not anywhere. We could have 50 years together or 5 months. But isn't any time better than none at all? Before he could answer, the sound of approaching horses broke the silence. Andrew rose quickly, positioning himself between Rebecca and the newcomers. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, and Andrew's blood ran cold as he recognized the man in the center. Nathan Walker had found him at last. Well, Walker called, his voice carrying across the clearing. Andrew Ellis. Took me a while to track you down. Rebecca, Andrew said quietly. When I create a distraction, run for the trees and don't look back. I won't leave you, she whispered fiercely. Walker dismounted, followed by his companions. You remember me, Ellis? The man you condemned to 5 years of hell. I remember a deserter who left his post and got 2 men killed, Andrew replied evenly. Walker spat on the ground. Those men were already dead. Command was sending us into a slaughter. He drew his pistol. But that's ancient history now. I came to settle accounts. There are witnesses who know I'm here, Andrew said, measuring the distance between them. Kill me, and you'll hang. Walker laughed. Who said anything about killing? I just want you to suffer like I suffered. His gaze shifted to Rebecca. Maybe starting with your pretty lady friend. Andrew's hand moved to his gun. This is between us, Walker. Leave her out of it. Too late for that. Walker sneered, raising his pistol. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Andrew drew and fired in one fluid motion, hitting Walker in the shoulder. The other men reached for their weapons, but Rebecca, who had quietly retrieved Andrew's rifle from his horse, fired a warning shot into the air. The next one won't miss, she called out, her voice steadier than Andrew would have believed possible. The standoff lasted only seconds before Walker's companions helped him back onto his horse, retreating with curses and threats. Andrew kept his gun trained on them until they disappeared from sight. When he turned, Rebecca was still holding the rifle, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. Are you all right? He asked, taking the weapon from her. She nodded. I grew up with 3 uncles who believed every proper lady should know how to shoot. A small, hysterical laugh escaped her. Though I never thought I'd need the skill. Andrew pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as the reality of what had just happened washed over them both. They'll be back, he said, with more men. Then we'll face them together, Rebecca replied. Or we'll go somewhere else. Helena, maybe. Or further west to Oregon Territory. Andrew drew back to look at her. You'd leave Silver Creek? I'd go anywhere with you, she said simply. But I won't spend my life waiting for you to decide I'm worth the risk. In that moment, seeing her courage in the face of real danger, Andrew finally understood. He'd been so focused on protecting her from physical threats that he'd become the greatest danger to her happiness. Rebecca, he said, taking her hands in his. Walker finding us today proves what I've always feared. My past will follow me wherever I go. Her face fell. Andrew, Let me finish, he said gently. It also showed me something I've been too blind to see. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. We're stronger together. And life is too precious to waste hiding from what might happen. He dropped to one knee before her. Rebecca Summers, I can't promise you safety. I can't promise we won't face danger again. But I can promise to face whatever comes standing beside you, not pushing you away. He swallowed hard. If you'll have me, I want to make a life with you. Here, or in Helena, or wherever the future takes us. Tears filled her eyes. Are you asking me to marry you? I am, he said. Though I have nothing to offer but myself and whatever future we build together. She shook her head. You're wrong. You have everything to offer. Her voice broke. But Andrew, I'm not worth the weight you've endured, the pain you've carried. Andrew rose to his feet, cupping her face in his hands. You're worth every second, he whispered. Every moment of solitude, every ghost I've carried, they all led me to you. And I'll spend the rest of my life thanking God they did. Rebecca's answer was in her kiss, fierce and sweet and full of promise. They were married 2 weeks later in the Silver Creek Church, with Mrs. Stevens weeping openly in the front pew and Mr. Calloway standing as Andrew's best man. The town turned out in force, perhaps as much for the celebration as for the protection their numbers offered against Walker's potential return. Andrew had wired the territorial marshal about the confrontation, and word came back that Walker and his men had been apprehended trying to cross into Dakota territory. The immediate danger had passed, but Andrew knew the frontier would always present new challenges. What had changed was his belief that he had to face them alone. By summer's end, Rebecca had accepted the teaching position in Helena, and Andrew had secured work with a respected ranch near the growing capital city. They purchased a small plot of land just outside town, where Andrew began building the home they would share. On the day they left Silver Creek, Mrs. Stevens hugged them both tightly. You two remember what brought you together, she admonished. Not just love, but courage. Takes both to make a life out here. As their wagon rolled away from the town that had changed both their lives, Rebecca leaned against Andrew's shoulder. Are you afraid, she asked, of starting over? Andrew looked down at his wife, the afternoon sun turning her chestnut hair to fire. Not anymore, he said honestly. The war taught me how quickly life can end. Walker taught me that the past never truly disappears. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But you taught me the most important lesson of all. What's that? That love isn't the luxury I thought it was, he said. Out here, it's the necessity that makes everything else bearable. The road stretched before them, dusty and uncertain, leading to a future neither could fully predict. But as the sun began its descent toward distant mountains, Andrew Ellis felt something he hadn't experienced since before the war. The simple, profound peace of knowing he was exactly where he belonged, beside the woman who had shown him that some things were worth the wait, the risk, and even the fear. Some things, like the love they'd found on the frontier, were worth everything.